Lawyers reveal, does political rhetoric drive ICE actions? Story 1. Anyone who entered the United States within the past 2 years and is currently seeking asylum is facing an extremely high level of risk if they go to court without legal representation. It's a brutal reality right now. Without a lawyer by their side, they're basically walking into a trap. Department of Homeland Security attorneys, often called DHS attorneys, will not hesitate to file a motion to dismiss the case on the spot. And then, almost like clockwork, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, those ICE officers, are waiting right outside the courtroom doors. As soon as the case gets dismissed, those ICE agents grab the person and place them into what's called expedited removal. It happens fast, with little chance to react or fight back. The process is ruthless and mechanical. Beyond that, most cases these days have just become much more difficult across the board. There are far more rescheduling delays than before, which leaves people hanging in limbo for even longer. Immigration judges, often referred to as IJs, seem to be rushing through hearings now, as if they're racing against some invisible deadline. Motions that would normally stand a fair chance of being granted are now being denied more frequently and with very little explanation. And the DHS attorneys. They're going full throttle with their aggression. They challenge everything, every document, every argument, every piece of evidence we submit. They don't budge, and there's zero room for negotiation or compromise. It's exhausting. At this point, it feels like there's a lot less flexibility in the entire process. We have to be extremely careful and strategic, almost like playing chess with the highest stakes imaginable. Creativity has become essential. We're constantly looking for new angles and approaches just to keep cases moving forward or to keep our clients from being detained or deported. Every single step requires extra caution and a whole lot of patience. This work has never been easy, but right now it feels like we're operating in a pressure cooker. Comment 1. Do you know what happens to people after they get deported? Like, once they're gone, where do they actually go? Are they immediately sent back to their home country? Do you ever hear from them again after that happens? Or is it just like they're taken away, and then there's no contact at all after that point? Narrator: generally speaking, yes, they are detained here for a period of time after the hearing, and then they're eventually sent back to their home country. That's the typical outcome for most deportation cases. Once they're taken into custody, they go through the removal process, which can vary in speed depending on a lot of factors, like whether their home country accepts deportees quickly or if there are any legal complications holding things up. Thankfully, I haven't had too many clients get deported recently. It's always a relief when that happens, because those situations are the most heartbreaking and stressful for everyone involved. But here's the thing: after the hearing or after any appeals have been fully processed and exhausted, my professional role is basically over. That's just how the legal process works. I can't do much beyond that point. And to be honest, I don't speak Spanish, which is the language many of my clients speak. So if we do stay in contact after that, it's usually through someone else at my firm who can communicate with them in their native language. They'll usually help with any follow-ups or updates if needed, but by then it's more about offering moral support than any actual legal assistance. Comment 2. Even Kristallnacht, which is often referred to as the Night of Broken Glass, was actually very unpopular among the ordinary German public at the time. This surprised and frustrated the Nazi leadership. They had expected a wave of enthusiastic support from the population, but instead, the reaction was largely negative. People were uncomfortable, fearful, and disturbed by the sheer level of violence and destruction that took place during that night. It wasn't just broken glass and vandalized shops, it was a terrifying display of force. Because of that backlash, the Nazis made the decision to carry out the Holocaust in secrecy, away from the public eye. They didn't want to risk another public outcry, or lose the quiet compliance of the population that they depended on to maintain their control. So instead of openly continuing such violent actions within the cities and towns, they moved the worst parts of their genocidal campaign into hidden locations, far from ordinary citizens. They built camps away from city centers and conducted their atrocities where most people wouldn't see them directly. It was all part of a strategy to continue their horrific plans without sparking more public unrest or dissent. Comment 3. The Holocaust most definitely was not carried out in secrecy. That's a common misconception. In reality, there were camps scattered all over the country, and some of them were shockingly close to towns and cities. For example, there was one right near the doorstep of my own hometown, clearly visible from the city itself. It wasn't hidden at all. People could literally see it from where they lived their everyday lives. Friends, colleagues, neighbors, ordinary people that everyone knew were suddenly rounded up and taken away. They simply vanished. One day they were there, and then they were gone, never to return. This wasn't some isolated or hidden event. It was something happening on a massive scale. Hundreds, sometimes even thousands of people were taken from each city and every community throughout the country. Anyone with even a bit of common sense could put two and two together and figure out what was going on. It wasn't subtle. People saw the empty homes, the disappearances, and the transports. They knew, but many of them chose to look the other way. They chose to believe the official excuses that were fed to them, things like relocation or labor resettlement. They wanted to believe those lies because the alternative was terrifying. If they didn't ignore it, if they dared to question or speak out against what was happening, they knew exactly what that could mean. It wasn't just fear of losing a job or getting a fine. It was the very real possibility of becoming the next target of the regime's brutal repression. Speaking up could mean arrest, torture, or worse. So people stayed quiet, pretending they didn't see what was right in front of them, just to protect themselves and their families. Comment 4. Both of these statements can actually be true at the same time. It's not necessarily a contradiction. The mass killings that happened on an industrial scale during the Holocaust were indeed carried out outside of Germany's official borders at that time. All 6 of the main extermination camps, those specifically designed for systematic mass killing, were located in Poland and other parts of Central Europe. These locations were chosen very deliberately. They were situated far away from the reach of most ordinary German citizens, tucked away in more remote areas where the general population wouldn't easily stumble upon them. But at the same time, there were plenty of other concentration camps that were very much located within Germany's borders during the war. Many of these camps were built near small towns or even larger villages. People who lived nearby absolutely knew that these camps existed. They could see the fences, the guard towers, and the prisoners being marched through the streets or fields. In some cases, you couldn't avoid seeing it, even if you tried. In addition to those camps, there were also forced laborers placed throughout the country. They were sent to work in factories, on farms, and in all sorts of industries across the countryside. Almost every farming community had laborers working under strict control. People knew the harsh conditions they were subjected to, and they also knew exactly what happened if one of those laborers broke the rules. It wasn't some vague rumor. It was common knowledge that the consequences were brutal. Punishments often involved public executions, like hangings in nearby forests or fields, carried out by SS or police squads as a warning to others. It wasn't just about ignoring what was happening. In many cases, people were very aware of the violence and oppression happening right around them. They either accepted it out of fear or saw it as a terrifying reminder of what could happen if they dared to resist or speak out against the regime. Comment 5. People absolutely knew what was going on. It wasn't some secret operation hidden in the shadows. One of the main purposes of the concentration camps, beyond their horrific primary function, was to send a very clear and terrifying message to the general population. These camps were meant to intimidate people, to keep them in line, and to scare them into submission. They weren't just facilities for imprisoning and harming people. They were also powerful tools of fear and psychological control. Let's talk specifics. Dachau, Sachsenhausen, Ravensbrück, Gross-Rosen, Mauthausen, and Buchenwald. These were just some of the many camps that existed within Germany's wartime borders. And they weren't hidden away in remote, inaccessible places. They were located near towns and cities, places where everyday citizens lived their lives. People could see the smoke from the chimneys. They could hear the screams. They saw prisoners being marched through their streets, emaciated and suffering. The signs were everywhere, and here's another critical point. The Holocaust wasn't the only case of mass extermination carried out by the Nazis. It's the most infamous and horrifying one, of course, but it wasn't their only act of industrial-scale killing. The Nazis targeted many different groups, and they used the same brutal, organized methods in other operations as well. Saying there were only 6 extermination camps really understates the horrifying scale of what happened. For example, Auschwitz wasn't just a single camp, it was a sprawling complex with around 40 sub-camps. It functioned as a massive industrial system of imprisonment, forced labor, and mass killing. By the end of the war, there were more than 44,000 concentration camps, sub-camps, and other detention facilities operating across Europe. That number is staggering. It shows just how widespread and systematic this entire operation was. The scope of the suffering, the violence, and the terror is almost impossible to fully comprehend. Even with all the historical records we have today, Comment 6 let's imagine a hypothetical situation here, just for the sake of discussion. Say there's someone who is a United States citizen, someone who's been fully naturalized for more than 30 years. This person lives, breathes, and fully embraces the American way of life, everything from the red, white, and blue flag to the cultural values and freedoms that come with it. They've spent decades building a life in the U.S., paying taxes, voting, working, and contributing to their community. But here's the tricky part. This same person originally comes from a country that has a very strict policy regarding citizenship. That country doesn't allow its citizens to officially renounce their citizenship, no matter how long they've been gone or what their current status is elsewhere. Now, fast forward to the present day. This country of origin is currently facing a severe crisis. They're running out of men quickly, likely due to an ongoing war or serious military conflict. Things are becoming increasingly desperate there. On top of that, their dictator is, at this moment, politically aligned with a certain controversial figure here in the United States, someone often referred to as a wannabe dictator. It's almost like the foreign leader is pulling the strings, wearing the American politician like a puppet, influencing decisions and policy from afar. But here's where things get even more unsettling. The political climate can change fast, very fast. Shifts in power, unexpected elections, coups, or even sudden alliances falling apart could completely change the dynamic between these two countries in an instant. That's what makes this hypothetical so alarming. So the question is, how worried should someone in that situation realistically be? Hypothetically speaking, of course. Should they be actively concerned about getting caught in the crossfire of shifting policies or even facing forced military conscription from their country of origin? It's a scary thought, especially for someone who considers themselves fully American but technically still holds citizenship elsewhere against their will. Comment 7. This right here is exactly why I ended up leaving the immigration field altogether. It just became too overwhelming and disheartening to keep going. Almost overnight, it felt like every single case was turning into an uphill battle, no matter how straightforward it seemed at first glance. The entire system shifted, and it wasn't just a few minor changes. It was like the rules of the game had been rewritten to make everything harder on purpose. Even the immigration judges, the IJs, started acting differently. They became noticeably more rigid, almost hostile in some cases. It was like they were under pressure to crack down harder, or just didn't care anymore about fairness and compassion. Here's a perfect example that still sticks with me. Back during the Obama administration, things weren't exactly easy, but there was still some room for common sense and flexibility. Let's say you had a client who was eligible for a 601A waiver, a provisional unlawful presence waiver. In those days, it was fairly simple. You'd go to a master calendar hearing, present the marriage certificate along with the spouse's proof of U.S. citizenship, and that was usually enough. The judge would administratively close the case right there on the spot. It wasn't some big ordeal, But then everything changed when Trump came into office. Suddenly, it wasn't enough to show basic documents anymore. You'd find yourself dragged into a full-blown merits hearing just to prove the legitimacy of the marriage. You had to bring stacks of evidence, photos, joint financial records, affidavits from friends and family, proof of shared property, everything you could possibly think of, to convince the court that the relationship was real. And even then, it felt like they were determined to find some excuse to deny it. What made it even worse was that some of these cases weren't even supposed to fall under the court's purview. Judges were supposed to focus on certain issues, but they started reaching beyond their boundaries just to tighten the screws on people. If they personally felt the application didn't have merit, they would refuse to close the case, even when the law allowed it. Things did ease up a bit under Biden, but honestly, it wasn't by much. The damage had already been done, and a lot of the judges appointed during the previous administration stuck around. They kept applying that same harsh, nitpicky scrutiny to every case that came before them. I'll never forget one particular example. I had submitted a child school report card from back in 2008 to help prove long-term presence in the country. It was a small detail in the grand scheme of things. But during the hearing, the judge zeroed in on it and actually scolded me in open court because the signature at the bottom of the page was slightly cut off during photocopying. They said something like, "How dare you bring such sloppy paperwork into this courtroom? It was ridiculous." That kind of attitude just became the norm, and eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't just frustrating, it was soul-crushing story too. I am completely ignorant on this, so I am genuinely curious. How do you not qualify for citizenship yet? I've had friends get it much faster. I really don't understand how this experience is so inconsistent. It's crazy to keep people in such a poor status like that after so much time. The frustration builds up when you see some folks sailing through the process in just a couple of years, while others linger in limbo for what feels like an eternity. Imagine pouring your life into a new country, building a home, raising a family, and still being treated like a temporary guest. It's not just about the paperwork, it's the emotional toll, the constant uncertainty hanging over your head, wondering if one wrong move could upend everything you've worked for. I've heard stories from friends who applied right after their green cards and became citizens swiftly, attending ceremonies with tears of joy, finally feeling like they truly belong. But then there are those who wait endlessly, their dreams deferred by bureaucratic hurdles that seem arbitrary and unfair. Why does the system vary so wildly? Is it funding, staffing, or something more systemic? The inconsistency makes you question the fairness of it all, leaving many immigrants feeling undervalued and overlooked in a nation built on their contributions. Comment 1. The immigration process is very complicated. For instance, the work visas have a queue based on country of origin. You can find the current queue if you search for Visa Bulletin, and the top countries are China, India, and Mexico, so it takes more time, years more depending on where you are from. Think about it. Someone from a less backlogged country might breeze through in months, but if you're from India, you could be staring at a decade-long wait, watching the calendar flip year after year while your career and life plans stall. The Visa Bulletin updates monthly, like a report card on global demand, showing priority dates that dictate when your application moves forward. It's a mix of hope and heartache each time you check it. Similarly, not all green cards are the same. Employment-based green cards require 5 years of waiting before you can become a citizen, whereas a marriage one is only 2 years. This difference stems from the intent behind each category. Employment-based ones focus on economic contributions, demanding proof of sustained commitment, while marriage-based prioritize family unity, allowing quicker integration. Picture an engineer who relocated for a job, excelling in their field but forced to wait those extra years, versus a spouse who can naturalize sooner, building roots faster. That being said, if they are renewing their green card, which are usually valid for 10 years, it may mean they just haven't gone through the process of becoming a citizen. It's not uncommon. I know people from countries that don't allow double citizenship, and they opt to stay as green card forever. These individuals often weigh the benefits. Retaining their original passport might mean easier travel back home, access to ancestral properties, or even voting rights in their birth nation. They renew every decade, filling out forms, paying fees, and attending biometrics appointments, all while living fully American lives, working, paying taxes, and participating in community events, yet holding back from full citizenship to preserve ties to their heritage. It's a delicate balance, reflecting deep personal values and practical considerations in a world where borders still matter profoundly. Comment 2. You don't have to apply for citizenship just because you are eligible. It used to be perfectly reasonable to maintain a green card for many years. Often it's for people who didn't anticipate staying long-term, or didn't intend to give up their previous citizenship, but had to stay and be able to work. Many arrive on temporary visas, thinking it'll be a short adventure, a job stint, a study program, but life unfolds differently. They fall in love with the opportunities, form unbreakable bonds, or face circumstances back home that make return impossible. Yet, the thought of renouncing their original citizenship feels like severing a vital cord, erasing part of their identity. So they renew their green cards, enjoying permanent residency perks like unrestricted work and travel, without the final step. Over time, this becomes a comfortable status quo, allowing them to contribute to society, raising kids who are citizens, owning homes, building businesses, while holding on to that piece of their past. It's a pragmatic choice, born from unforeseen paths and the desire to keep options open in an unpredictable world. Comment 3. There are a lot of different reasons someone may not be a U.S. citizen but a longtime green card holder instead. I know someone personally who has been a permanent resident green card holder for over 50 years, came here when he was 14, worked every day of his life, and is still poor, has a family here and everything, hasn't even been back to his birth country since he left, but is still not a U.S. citizen because it is extremely expensive and time-consuming and complicated. This man, let's call him Carlos, crossed the border as a teenager seeking better prospects, starting with menial jobs that built calluses on his hands and resilience in his spirit. Decades later, he's a grandfather, his children and grandchildren fully American, yet the cost, around $1,400 plus legal fees, always seemed out of reach amid rent, groceries, and medical bills for his ailing wife. When he finally had the spare $1,400 to finally make a real attempt, it reached a dead end after months of trying to gather the proper documents because his city's office said they lost the paperwork from his first marriage, which is apparently required. Those months involved endless phone calls, visits to dusty government offices, and gathering faded certificates, only to hit a wall that left him defeated and disillusioned. The emotional weight was immense, frustration boiling into quiet rage at a system that demands perfection from imperfect records. He's more worried about paying his bills than paying over $1,000 to go through a lengthy legal process and then be told, "Oh, whoops, sorry, we can't find your paperwork." Daily survival takes precedence, utility payments, food on the table, over a process that promises belonging but delivers headaches. Now he's too afraid to attempt it again right now, because ICE and immigration are targeting green card holders as well for no good reason, and anything can put a target on your back when you're Hispanic at the moment. The current climate amplifies his fears. News stories of deportations, even for minor infractions, make him cautious, avoiding anything that might draw attention. He reflects on his life here, the friends, the neighborhood barbecues, the pride in his family's achievements, wondering if pursuing citizenship is worth the risk in these tense times. Comment 4. There are many countries that don't allow dual citizenship, and if you chose to become an U.S. citizen, you'll have to give up your other citizenship. There are a lot of reasons why some people don't want to do that, including healthcare, ownership rights, ease of entry, and many more. For example, in nations like China or India, renouncing citizenship could mean losing inheritance rights to family land or facing bureaucratic nightmares for visas to visit relatives. Healthcare is another big one. Some countries offer universal coverage that's superior or more affordable, a safety net they don't want to forfeit. Ease of entry back home, without the scrutiny foreigners face, keeps family reunions simple. Beyond that, sentimental reasons play in. National pride, cultural identity, or even military service obligations in the original country. People ponder these trade-offs deeply, often consulting family elders or immigration forums, weighing the American dream against irreplaceable roots. In the end, staying a green card holder becomes a bridge between worlds, allowing them to thrive in the U.S. While honoring their origins, Story 3: a family law client of my colleague was deported to a country he hasn't been to in decades, and where he doesn't even speak the language. Comment 1: I guy the first no. I grew up with his daughters is Polish, but he was born outside Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria in 1946, about 9 months after his parents both survived and were liberated. During the first Trump admin, they were trying to deport him to Austria since that's where he was born. But he's Polish and has been here since like 1947. Nicest guy in the world, retired, drives a cab in my hometown. Never even learned to speak Polish, much less Austrian. And now he's worried it's going to happen all over again. Story 4: do you think people who recently got their green cards are in danger too? Just asking out of curiosity. Comment 1: they absolutely are. My housekeeper and her husband got their green cards approved about 6 months ago, after being in country for the past 28 years. In December, they received a letter that their green cards had been approved in error and were no longer valid. Legal immigrants are having their legal status revoked and are then subject to deportation. Comment 2: there have already been several legal residents that have been detained and had their status revoked for their views speech. The answer is yes. Honestly, any foreign enough-looking citizen is as well, given this administration's opposition to due process. Story 5: some of my clients have been really stressed. A few have had court dates come up out of the blue, or old cases suddenly reopened. It's like ICE has been digging into past records. And yes, sadly, I've seen a couple folks get deported recently. That's been happening more often too. It's not just raids, it's regular police pulling folks over and then flagging immigration stuff. A bunch of attorneys are fighting hard, filing motions, stalling deportations, getting people out on bond. There's a whole underground support network trying to hold the system accountable. It's scrappy, but it's there. Comment 1: my wife is an attorney, and I have to say that the hard-fought, limited, but very real success that lawyers who give a fuck are having fighting all of this is one of the only things keeping me somewhat optimistic that we'll get out of it with our democracy mostly intact. Story 6: some said they have also had issues with, but seems to be location-based. Bakersfield Detention Center makes you go through a few hoops. Yes, I have thought about. I was denied entry 2 times late at night, like 9 or 10 p.m. They said I had to visit during regular visitation hours, which was never the case before, because clients are allowed to see their clients whenever. Both times it happened, the supervisor, it must have been a mistake, the person I talked to didn't know. A detention center in like an hour or 2 south of Phoenix, they can careless. That detention center is run by DHS. They really made we wait 2 hours outside until it was 8 a.m. Then while inside they could not find him because he was getting looked at by a doctor and forgot to bring him to the visitor's office and took him back to his cell. The ones in CA are run by for-profit companies. The people that work there don't know much. Story 7: we had a lawyer arrested last night at our legitimate peaceful protest. He had become the guardian of a 21-year-old seeking asylum, was going through the proper legal steps, and was here legally. He had a required check-in yesterday, and ICE got him for simply existing and doing the right thing. He, the lawyer, posted about it online. People went to protest, and the lawyer was arrested for failing to disperse. There wasn't any hostility, and the crowd was thrown canisters of pepper spray and shot with rubber bullets. They apparently didn't know that someone was live streaming from an apartment overlooking the block, and went on to lie saying that people were violent, but nobody was shot. Videos show the opposite. The lawyer was bailed out within hours, and I hope he fights it. Comment 1: whole lot of people being kettled into an area, told that trying to break through police barriers will be taken as a sign of aggression, but then when those people don't leave, obviously since they're surrounded. They are arrested a few hours later for being out past curfew. That's how they got a ton of people arrested in 2020. so it doesn't surprise me to see similar tactics coming back. Story 8 Business Immigration Attorney here. My clients haven't faced any of this, but their case timelines are ridiculously extended. Trump's first administrations did the same thing. They fuck up the behind-the-scenes processes to make sure case processing slows down as part of a larger anti-immigrant push. Also, I went to my first interview at the San Jose USCIS office last week. My God. So much propaganda playing on a loop. The best part is the portraits of Trump and J.D. Vance are in between the entrances to the men's and women's restrooms, where they belong. Every single one of my clients are anxious. I don't blame them. I just remind them that all the awful shit happening is happening to less than 0.01% of people in their situation. There's a non-zero chance of shit happening, but the risk functionally zero for my clients. It's a different story for people currently being targeted by the administration. Story 9 Not an attorney, but spoke to our immigration attorney the other day. There's a case going through the courts now where ICE conducted a workplace raid and are holding the workplace criminally responsible because they should have known they hired undocumented workers. They're charging the HR folks with a Class 4 misdemeanor. So they're using more scare tactics for the employers now too. Comment 1 HR exists to give the owners deniability and keep them at arm's length from anything illegal going on at lower levels. This has been true forever. Unless there's a paper trail showing the owners told HR to break or ignore the law, they can't be touched. Smart bosses don't write such things down. Story 10 Not an attorney, but police dispatcher here. On the law side of things, ICE is issuing their own warrants essentially, basically just says if you contact said person you are supposed to call the provided hash and wait until an agent can come meet you. If it is an extended ETA, they asked to get all the contact info for the said individual. Unless my cops are already arresting said person on a different crime, they are almost most definitely never doing said request. I think that is where a lot of these sanctuary counties are coming from. Police that see how bullshit these warrants are, and on top of that, it's asking them to sit there and wait with a person who most of the time didn't do anything wrong. They aren't going to prioritize something like that over an actual emergency. Per our sheriff, the only time that we might help ICE is if they are going after someone who already has a warrant from our county for a different crime. Obviously, not all cops are like this, but I think majority of agencies are falling under this same umbrella. I'd guess the majority of the police presence at these protests aren't there because they want to help ICE get all these criminals, but probably because that is what they are being told to do. Story 11 I'm an attorney. Other than the AEA deportations, it seems like business as usual. Doesn't seem like any more than under prior administrations. Lots of political theater going on though. The AEA deportations were very unusual, but a very small percentage of the total removals. Comment 1 Also an attorney. I'm going to disagree about business as usual from the client perspective. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and my undocumented clients are terrified. The mental toll Trump's rhetoric is having on these people is massive. I also cannot stress enough, this isn't directed at you, that these are people. They're incredibly hardworking and are probably my best clients when it comes to showing up to court, talking with me, and completing probation sentences. Comment to hearing officer here, can confirm, folks are terrified that their parking citation is going to upend everything for them. I have seen more tears in the last 2 weeks than ever, begging to just have it dismissed. It won't happen again, over an expired meter citation, the lowest infraction possible. It pains me to see the worry they come in with, and it pains me to see relief when we can find a way. This shouldn't be. Story 12 I'm also an attorney and have to disagree with you. It isn't business as usual. Expanding expedited removal to mean anyone who has entered the country within the past 2 years is no longer able to access due process through the courts, and instead subject to summary removal is not business as usual. Policy that seeks to make immigration judges agree to form motions to dismiss orally. Because why would OPLA ever do work immediately with no opportunity for respondents to oppose, represented or otherwise, is not business as usual. ICE carrying out en masse enforcement inside immigration courts and detaining people going to court for no reason other than they can is not business as usual. Hell, all the recent changes to the law itself, Lake and Riley making shoplifting a ground for mandatory detention. BIA cases stripping jurisdiction for judges to even hear bond cases for folks paroled in is insane and not even close to business as usual. God knows I complained about Biden often enough. The man did not come through as much as I certainly wanted, but this administration is wild. I can't believe I'm sat here missing the priorities memo. Story 13. Far from business as usual. I'm an attorney, and I had been volunteering with an immigration nonprofit. To give you an idea of what I've seen. Just to set the stage, religious-based nonprofit that operates in part out of church buildings has begun gating the parking lot and locking off the building, with private security to man the gates due to the threat of ICE raiding a fucking church. As others have mentioned, almost any civil or immigration court used to be absolutely off limits to enforcement. The reason obviously being the courts are a place to try to solve the issues, and there are often other options if something doesn't turn out the way you want. Now the Gestapo is waiting if your motion isn't successful. On a good day, immigration courts sucked. Favorite story of mine was one of the last times I was in there. The government attorney spent the whole morning docket on his secure laptop on Indeed searching for new jobs, while he would randomly say, "No objection," when prompted by the judge. These days, I see a constant job posting for looking for immigration judges and DHS attorneys. After purging the ranks, they are looking to fill the slots with like-minded individuals. Things have gotten really fucking dark if you are paying attention. Story 14. Comparing this to Biden deportation policy is entirely disingenuous at best and ridiculous at worst. It's not political theater either. Also, the link you shared was from around 2 months into Trump's term. Forced deportations have significantly increased since then. I'm not some die-hard coastal liberal that blindly follows the Democrats either. I feel like that's an important distinction here. Trump is deporting people while promoting very dangerous and divisive rhetoric. His entire cabinet's response to anything relating to the why they are doing the things they are is, "We are just following the mandate the American people voted for on November 4th. Even in Trump's first time, we have never seen a president be so divisive." Trump has done absolutely nothing to mitigate the fear or concern from the left, nor has he tried to unite the country during an obviously unstable time. Story 15. I'm not specifically an immigration attorney, but in my line of work, there's some significant intersection. 2 points. First, there are a few cases where I represent parents whose kids were taken away by social services, and none of the family has legal status. The kids were born in Mexico, and the husband whose status they relied on to get here is deceased. The vultures were absolutely circling back in January for the kids who are in the system for no other reason than their parents. However, not even DSS realized, because my client is very hard to reach, find, that the kids had already been enrolled in a special program for immigrant kids trying to escape an abusive household during the Biden administration. So hopefully, those kids do not get deported. As for my client, I imagine things are going to change for her once felony child abuse charges are filed. Last I've heard they're still coming. To be honest, that's not a big change from prior administrations. I've noticed a recurring trend with a number of state-level, not federal, drug felony cases I have resolved this year. I've had a few clients now ask me about why immigration is getting involved. Each of these people are unquestionably U.S. citizens. Substances involved range from prescription meds to fentanyl. This may be a nothing burger that was always happening because drugs are involved. But I'm filing it away because in the decade plus I've been doing this, I've never been asked by a client about it. Either they're paying more attention because of the news or something else is going on. Overall, I'm very worried about what's coming in the future. But at least for the moment, thank goodness ICE was not more nationally mobilized, engaged back in January. It has given the general public time to catch up on what's happening, instead of being caught by surprise all at once. Story 16. What about the children? I read that DHS has hired a third-party contractor to care for and transport unaccompanied minors. While I cannot vet this, it sounds like something our POTUS and his cabinet could do. Whatever happened to the babies in cages his last term? Why isn't CPS or DHS handling this? Where is the accountability? Where are the manifests of all deportees? Before this white nationalist takeover, as long as you did not rape, kill, or eat a pet, undocumented immigrants got a court date. A judge and a pro bono immigration lawyer handled these matters. If they didn't appear in court, they got put into the system as a FTA, and if they got pulled over or apprehended in any way, it was immediate deportation to their country of origin. Or at least that was how it was in the San Joaquin Valley, California. Immigrants were doing the jobs white people didn't want. We called them migrant workers, and family-owned farms provided little villages for them to live in while they were picking, sorting, and packing our produce in 112+ heat. Same thing in the slaughterhouses, meat packing companies, battery chicken egg farms. As long as they didn't commit any crimes, we all minded our own business. They would move about according to the growing seasons. It was a misdemeanor to be here illegally. What is happening now is going to hurt independent family-owned farms. Some of these farms have been in the family since the Dust Bowl migration. Oil companies buy up the foreclosed farms and turn them into big ag operations. Chevron, Tenneco, Occidental Petroleum grow carrots in Bakersfield, among other things. Everything is big equipment automated. The amount of waste is ridiculous.